Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today we're joined with Bryce Carter. And how do you say your coaching nickname?
Paragon strength.
Yes, okay. I thought so, but I was like, I don't think I've ever heard him say it out loud, so let me just double check. That works. So you recently did a meet and you freaking crushed everything. So we thought doing a podcast about the experience might be helpful for listeners.
That was my best meet so far. I think that was my seventh meet
Oh, wow.
I've done. Started in May 2022, so big improvement since then. Honestly, a perfect day. Went 9 for 9.
Yes.
Great attempt selection. Every lift was right at the peak of what I had on the day. I guess so. Squat, I ended up with a 639-pound squat.
Awesome.
I'm gonna do these in pounds. I can't remember the kilograms.
That's okay. That's good. How much did you weigh? How much did you weigh for the meet?
Oh yeah, came in at I weighed in at 235.2 pounds.
Okay.
So I do remember that 106.7 kilos. Squat ended up with 639 pounds, bench 330 pounds or 331, and then deadlift was 650 pounds.
That's badass. Those are good numbers, man.
Oh yeah, and of course PR'd on all the lifts, and my total was 1600 or 1620 pounds.
That's awesome. So those are great numbers, and I think that's fun as a listener of podcasts myself. It's fun to get an idea of kind of the qualifications of the person, before you get into the long details of things. So if you're, squatting and deadlifting over 600 competitions, that's certainly going to qualify you.
Yes. Yeah, well, I'll take it. Yeah. My bench will get there eventually, but
yeah, it's still a very good bench. But your squat and your deadlift are just so strong; they're like outpacing your bench for now.
Yeah, I'll take it, man. Yeah. Those are the total builders.
That's awesome. For the listeners, if they were listening to this podcast and they were interested in competing, I thought it might be fun for them to get an idea of kind of like the timeline of everything. Now, I've had clients, and you probably do have where it's funny is you did a little bit of a water cut just for the fun of it, just to improve your dots. But I've had people tell me, I want to do a meet in 4 weeks. Do you think I can lose like 20 pounds? And it's like, good God, like, what are you doing? So the process of like, if you want to make a weight class, that should start months out, not necessarily like a week out. But for the listener, you had decided to do a little bit of a water cut. Can you talk through us like when you started that up to the day of weigh-in, like what you did?
Yeah, so I plan to start first of all, you need to know going into it what weight class you're competing in and how much you need to cut and what's reasonable, right? So for me, luckily, I was already in my weight class. Came into it around 240 pounds in my 242, I think it's 242 and a half class. So really the goal for me was just to gain a few dots points, which is the scoring in powerlifting. It's a ratio of, weight lifted to body weight. So every little bit counts. So I really came into it saying, I want to shed a little bit of water out of my system, just enough that, I could come in at a lower body weight, but it wouldn't affect my performance and I wouldn't have to stress about it too much. So in the past, I've done the biggest cut I've done was a 15-pound water cut, which was brutal.
Yeah, yes, that would be.
I think that was 7 or 8% of my body weight at the time. So, and I did need to do that one. I think I was about 15 pounds over, but this one, I cut about 5 or 6 pounds, just so with basic water loading and carb manipulation. So, the way I've always done it is I have an idea 2 weeks out how much I need to cut, and I'll kind of calculate how much water I need to be loading at the peak and how long I need to build up to that to make it sustainable and easy to drop it off. So a week out, so my weigh-in was Friday. I started the previous Friday just monitoring how much water I was drinking.
Mm-hmm.
The Sunday before is when I started to really increase my water intake. So I believe Sunday I was drinking 1.5 gallons of water, just normal tap water.
Okay.
Monday I got up to 2 gallons. Tuesday 2 gallons. Wednesday 2.5 gallons. And Thursday is when the day came that you don't really look forward to. So
Yeah.
Thursday my plan was 32 ounces of water, so that's 1/4 gallon.
Oof.
Done drinking that by 2 or 3 p.m. or so, and then from there it's really that's what I was talking about. All right, okay, and so from there on, so on Thursday that's when I would start, um, restricting my water and my carbs. So I guess something else I'll mention is this whole time I wasn't really paying attention to my carbs.
Okay.
Because this wasn't a big cut for me.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like I needed to pull out all the stops, if you know what I mean. So, Thursday, that 32 ounces of water and no carbs after breakfast is essentially what I did. So the whole day I was basically on a keto diet.
Yeah. I like that. That's
and
funny.
holding up the best I could. And yeah, I mean, I was pretty dehydrated, I guess. It wasn't the worst I've done, but I shed 5 or 6 pounds, weighed in the next morning, and it was pretty successful. So
Yeah.
I was pretty happy with it.
If you could take us through Thursday, what did you eat? Like, just for people who are like, oh, if he ate no carbs, what did he eat?
Yeah, so in the morning, you can't have too many carbs. I think I had 40 grams of carbs in the morning. Carbs hold water, so the more carbs you eat, the less you're probably going to lose. So after that, really, I was eating like nuts and dairy and meat without seasonings on it, like tilapia, eggs, had some bacon. Something else, on these bigger cuts, you do have to pay attention to, like sodium, stuff like that. Bacon's pretty high sodium. I could have easily cut that out, but that was kind of the gist of it. A very, very wacky keto diet because not something I normally do, obviously.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And that is something like good to comment about if somebody's looking to manipulate water being stored in their body. The three main components you would manipulate are water, carbohydrates, and sodium. And if you manipulate all three optimally, you're going to get the greatest amount of water loss. But as long as you're manipulating one of them, you're going to get a significant amount. So that might be, that would be for the listeners why you didn't pay attention to sodium. Because, well, if I'm not drinking any water and I'm not eating any carbs, I don't have to worry about any excess, and I'm doing air quotes for the listeners, any excess of sodium pairing with anything because there wasn't the water there aren't the carbs there. So you're not going to get glycogen, which is the fancy term for water, sodium, and carbohydrates being stored in the muscles.
Yeah, and something else I guess I didn't mention is on my bigger water cuts, I would even move to distilled water as I got to the heavier water days, I guess. And that's just another thing that would just flush out whatever's left,
Mm-hmm.
and distilled water really passes through you. And it's not something you want to drink all the time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a pleasant experience, but it is just another thing. If you're doing something a little bit more intense,
Yeah.
you could try.
Yeah. So that was good. And it's, how does it feel mentally to be in a place where you get to do a weight cut by choice versus being forced to?
It's definitely less stressful,
Yeah.
of course. And that's good in a sense because, even if, you make weight, that stress you were carrying doing that water load, I don't think it's instantly gone the moment you've,
Mm-hmm.
weighed in. I think you're going to feel the effects of that going into the meat itself.
Yeah.
So I felt confident the whole time. My mindset the whole time I was water loading and cutting was, I'm doing this for fun. Let's see what I can shed off. Just, doing like a half that effort water cut, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, I think it was just a fun little experiment to see what I could do with what's essentially like a gut cut, I guess you could call it, um, with just stuff I've learned along the way.
Yeah. I think that's good. And to think the overall process of doing a meet has its own stress components. Can I show up on a certain day and do certain weights? So being able to lower stress that might be compounding on that, such as trying to make a weight class, the more you can get rid of other stressors by being, on point weight wise ahead of the meet, or maybe have dieted for a couple months beforehand. So then that cut isn't so extreme. You have been through that process. So for those who maybe are 10 to 15 pounds over their weight class, do you have an opinion as to whether you think that they should stay there and rely on the water cuts in order to hit their meets? Or now that you've felt what it feels like to just be at weight, do you think that that's maybe a better approach? Which approach would you choose to do?
I think generally, yeah, so if you're an intermediate to beginner powerlifter, you should not be water cutting. There's just no reason to be doing that because you're not chasing records. You're going in there to hit a PR more than anything else. I mean, we're all here to hit PRs, but you know, you want your full performance on that day, and you're not, you know, inching out for those half pound, bests. So if you're not chasing for records, there's no point unless you're just trying to have fun, because at the end of the day, it does affect performance.
Yeah.
If you're 10 to 15 pounds over, you're not chasing records. You just need to accept that you're in a different weight class. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
That's a lot to cut, and I think there's a certain percentage of your body weight that you just need to say, that's just not acceptable to cut. And you also have to think about what time period you have to recomp or rehydrate
Very true.
after you would do the cut. So a lot of these, like, I guess I'll call them deadlift bar federations, I think they're all 24-hour weigh-ins. You can do like a 5 to 8% water cut, that being percent of your body weight, and get away with it. Of course, if you're doing it right. But if you're doing, a stiff bar federation like USAPL or IPF or whatever, you might be able to get away with 2% before it affects your performance.
And that's because they have 2-hour weigh-ins.
2-hour weigh-ins, and you can only drink so much water, rehydrate, eat so many carbs in that 2 hours while you're warming up. And you're going to go out and attempt your first squat. So I think that's kind of my opinion, is save the water cutting for when you've got something you really need to fight for every inch for, I guess is what I'll say.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice, because typically when somebody's a beginner or intermediate, your bigger fish to fry, so to speak, would be is, can I maintain my technique when I do the big lifts? Can I manage my nervousness? There's a lot that has to do with just the basic performance. And then as you become more comfortable as an intermediate and then advanced, as you said, now all of a sudden maybe you're going for a state record. There are some other things that you're focusing on. Being able to maintain technique under the big weights is no longer much of a stress. So you do have capacity now to add the stress of trying to do weight cuts or doing other things. So overloading yourself as a beginner is unnecessary if part of that overload is simply like water cutting when you're not going for a record. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is a good experience to do a water cut at some point, just to try it out. I mean, I guess if you're a beginner, you want to try and cut 3 to 4 pounds. That's not going to affect your performance much. You may as well try it out, see if it affects your performance, and learn, because you're not going to perfect it the first time, especially if you do it on your own without the aid of a coach or somebody that's been through it themselves. So I guess, why not? You could try it out and live and learn. That's kind of, part of the fun.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways for people to do that they don't do is to try it out in training. Like just when you have a big squat day or a big deadlift day or whatever, just do a little bit of a water cut, trying to practice that in like the off season, quote unquote. I think people don't utilize enough of the non-competition time for competition-related events. So, for example, I have one client right now who wants to do a powerlifting meet. They've never done one before, and they were talking about being nervous about doing big, heavy weights in front of people. And I was like, well, if you think about it, you already do that in the gym. Like, you're already doing your heaviest attempts in training in the gym. Why don't we just do a mock meet at the gym one day? And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah, why don't we just get the nervousness of the first time doing a 1 max rep, 1 max? Why don't we just do that in training? And then you get a sense of feeling what that feels like. So then when you go to the meet, it's not as new of a stimulus.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That's something I used to do myself before I started working with you. I would do an SBD day, a few weeks leading into the competition. Not a good idea, but it's something I do, just my openers, and just see how I felt. I was like, this is how it'll be on meet day. Let's get it in. So
Yeah.
I think that's a great experience to try out.
Yeah. And then after weigh-in, what did you end up doing in regards to hydration and food?
Yeah, so we kind of talked about it. We came up with a better strategy than I've done in the past. But so immediately right after, I mixed Pedialyte and water, 1-to-1 ratio, and drank, I think, about half a gallon of that. Not trying to overfill myself or anything, but to thirst essentially, and had as many carbs as I could deal with right after, and sodium. So I had you really recommended muffins to me, but
Yes.
at the store that day there was a Danish that was calling my name.
Oh, hey,
so
that's perfect. That's
there
perfect.
you go. So that's what I went right in on. That plus the Pedialyte water, and I went after some fruit. I went after some pineapple right after, and that kind of covered me for a little bit. But the rest of the day was really just hammering carbs. So you recommended to me 2 to 4 grams of carbs per pound of body weight. So I shot for like closer to the upper end of that, but I wasn't going to let myself get over full because that could affect your sleep, at a certain point. And I mean, sleep is really, what's going to let you express your strength the best on meet day more than anything. So it's trying to space out your carbs. That's a lot of carbs, 2 to 4 grams per per pound body weight. I'm normally eating like 350 grams per day. So I got up to 850 grams that day.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And yeah, I went to bed full for sure. Not a normal experience. It was a lot. So yeah, a lot of rice. Tried to keep it low on the protein and the fats generally. See a lot of rice. I'm really trying to remember everything I ate, but there was definitely a little bit of crap. I mean, when you're eating that many carbs, definitely some crap.
And that's okay. That's like we said, the idea is to get the carbs not only into the mouth, but into the muscles. And the rate of digestion is extremely important. So it can feel, when I used to do it and when I've done it before, it almost feels like it counters everything you've ever learned. Is because all of a sudden I'm eating carb-only meals. When do I ever eat carbs without protein? And then I'm choosing carbs based on the fastest that they can digest that doesn't upset my stomach. Whereas typically we're choosing slower digesting as a way to manage, insulin and body fat and all that stuff. So it can feel as though you're almost violating all of your normal premise.
Absolutely. And I like to eat for volume on a normal day. So I'll go for like potatoes, brown rice, higher fiber foods.
Yes.
For other reasons other than just I like to feel full. But yeah, just going directly against the grain, like rice. And I mean, I ate some candy. I ate a Danish. Let's be honest. At a certain point, you got to get it in. But,
absolutely, yeah.
It was very, very interesting, and I could really feel the effects in the morning after. Like I felt like I had more energy than normal, and that's exactly what we were shooting for.
I love that. Love to hear that.
yeah, so it was a lot of food. It helped a lot. In the past,
Good.
I didn't really care about how many fats I was eating, and timing the fats
Mhm.
was another thing. So yeah, most of the day I stayed low on fats, and then the other thing was no. I don't think I had any liquid calories minus the Pedialyte, and I had some Powerade too. Um, so that was another big thing. I used to drink a lot of juice and like soda
Yep.
on my recomp day, and that's something that I made a point to avoid as much as possible, and that did absolutely benefit me
Good. Good. Yes.
from an energy standpoint and like a digestion
Hmm.
standpoint. My bathroom trips, I guess, is what I'll say, were more manageable
Good.
because of it. So yeah, that was overall just a great strategy. It's really seemed to work out based on my performance the next day.
Good. I'm very happy to hear that, and it is fun, especially for someone like yourself and anybody who's taking the time to listen to this podcast. You're going to put so much into everything you're doing, and it's fun to have a game plan that you can feel comfortable with. Maybe it stretches a little bit of the comfortableness, like having to eat a lot of carbs, but you have a game plan. You're like, okay, I'm doing X, Y, Z, and then you get a chance to feel that now. So now the next time you go into a meet, you're gonna be like, oh man, I'm doing that again because it felt so good. So getting to experiment and finding routines that match your body, it then just gives you an increased sense of confidence moving forward from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So next meet, if I need to cut, which I might just for fun, like I did this time,
Mhm.
like I know what worked
Yes,
and I know what foods worked for me well this time and which ones I'd probably stay away from next time. And, I feel good about when that next time comes.
that's awesome. Very good. So now that leads us into meet day. So if you don't mind, give us a little rundown of maybe what you did before you even got to the squat bar. Like when did we wake up? What did we eat? How did you prepare yourself before that first attempt?
Yeah. So this was, so it was a USPA, no, not USPA, PLU meet. So weigh-in day before, like we said. Um, so you kind of show up whenever you need to, essentially that morning.
Mhm.
Unlike 2 hour weigh-ins, there was
Yeah.
no set time. So I woke up at so I started lifting. I think at 10:30, let's say, in the morning. That's when my first attempt was. So I got up at 7:30, mostly because I couldn't get back to sleep. Just that
Oh,
anxiety,
yeah.
at a certain point, only so much you can do. Um, I've got my I've got a dog, so I walked my dog. Um, and the first thing I thought and we discussed was getting around 200 to 250 grams of carbs before lifting. So normally I'm not eating that many carbs in the
No.
morning.
Yeah.
So I'm closer to a 60 to 80 grams in the morning kind of guy. So I I had I had some Pop Tarts, which are surprisingly really high carb, low fat,
Yes.
believe it or not.
Yeah.
Uh, so I felt good about that. And a I like to make this like orange juice Greek yogurt mix,
Mhm.
which you post all the time. I learned from Stan Efferding,
Yeah.
and it's just a great way to get those carbs in. And um, I think that's mostly what I had that morning to eat. Like I said, I normally don't eat that much in the morning, so
Yeah.
shooting for 250 was a long shot, but I got in what I could. I
Yeah.
felt good. I felt, I wasn't hungry at all, and I wasn't overstuffed, so I was happy with that. Um, but so going in to, I guess, to the gym, I got there around 9, so like an hour and a half before my first attempt.
Okay.
Um, and the first things I was doing was just walking, generally walking around the meet, just watching people, trying to stay warm, get warm, stretch your legs, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, at a certain point, I was, I think, about an hour before I started warming up, doing sort of like mobility drills, a little bit of static stretching, but mostly dynamic stretching. So I like to get work in with like a glute band,
Yeah.
um, just really focusing on opening my hips. That's a big thing for me to hit depth. Is I've got to do some sort of abduction drill. Otherwise, I will not hit depth. that's how warm-ups were trending for a little bit, which I was not super happy about. But so mobility drills, and at a certain point I was under the bar. So I start with a plate on the bar. Just as like a side note, I used to start with just the bar, but I've learned that with just the bar, there's not enough weight on the bar to actually push me into a good position. So with just the bar, I'm super leaned over. It doesn't mimic my normal squat technique. So I figured I've done a lot of dynamic stretching before, and I was doing body weight squats. I may as well skip the bar and just jump to one plate. So that's something I found out pretty recently, I guess, just a fun little note. But
that's actually real quick, if you don't mind me jumping in. There's I've heard it discussed with like Dr. Stuart McGill and some other high-level people in regards to performance. And there's not necessarily a debate, but there's a discussion about the mobility that is appropriate for powerlifters. And the discussion is you have one side who says, you should be able to squat ass to grass, and that should be, whether it's an empty bar or your 1 rep max. There's the other side that says there should be muscular tension in the way in which you move. So as you're squatting down, you're going to be externally rotating your knees. You're going to be building up muscular tension so that when you hit parallel, you have all this muscular tension to help brace and stabilize the joints. And then you can push against the weight load to come back to the top. So if we're thinking about squats specifically. So there is a group of people who would say that it would be appropriate for a powerlifter to not be able to hit parallel if they're using their same mechanics that they would use under a 1 rep max. So if you're feeling that, that's actually acceptable by a large group of people who would say that means that you're just simply relying on proper technique and you're using that muscular tension buildup to help stabilize your joints. And I believe whenever, like I'm doing my max effort stuff and competing, I will feel that same way as well. And when I'm away from heavy squats or deadlifts, I actually do have a greater range of motion. I have more freedom to squat deeper. But as soon as I go back into heavier training, everything tightens up a little bit to help protect me in those most extreme positions that a powerlifter would get into, such as parallel in a squat.
Right. And I kind of carried the same thought process through with my deadlift as well, which I guess we'll talk about a bit later when we get to deadlift. But it's interesting and something just to experiment with, especially, or I think if you lift heavier, like you've got higher 1 rep maxes, I guess.
Yes.
Just try it, because at a certain point, you're building fatigue with your warm ups. Maybe you could skip that extra, that set with the bar. That's not going to kill you, of course. That's not going to make or break your top set of 500 pounds. But do you really need that? Just something to think about. So I really like that point, and that's something I've been trying with squat. And for me, I'm squatting over 600 pounds. So for me, I'm doing red plate jumps. So that's 50 kilograms at a time, 25 on each side. So I'm just doing red plate jumps. So 1 red, 2 red, 3 red, 4 red. My last warm up was that many reds plus a yellow, which I think was 562 pounds, if I'm remembering correctly, with a squat bar, which is 25 kilos itself. So that's kind of how I normally structure my warm-ups. And in my head, I was thinking, how would I warm up to my opener in training, essentially? So if I was taking my opener, which was, I think it was 595 pounds, how would I warm up to that in training? That's exactly what I'll do in the warm-up room.
Very smart. Keep it the same, keep it consistent, keep it what you're used to.
Absolutely. So that worked out perfect. It's a funny thing on meet day. I don't know how many people experience this, but my last warm up in the warm-up room never goes as well as the opener on the
Yeah,
platform.
exactly.
Uh, my buddies that were there handling me were saying they don't know if I really hit depth on that last warm-up, and I felt kind of like crap moving it up.
Yeah.
I was grunting and all that stuff. Uh, so, just it's just that little bit of edge that adds on to your, just on top of your mind going out on the platform for your first attempt. But yeah, that's kind of how I warmed up for my squat, got ready for the whole day. Really, I guess.
Awesome. Well,
Waking
it's
up to
you
the
did
gym.
well, like, and that's all really good warm up protocol. And to touch on that real quick about the last warm up feeling really hard, that is definitely not uncommon. And then once you get out in front of the crowd, in front of the judges, your adrenaline and your endorphins really crank up. So typically the opener, assuming you plan things out well, you're not trying 110% of your max for an opener. If you're somewhere around 90 to 95%, you can lift it. And it's going to feel a lot easier once you get in front of those judges, you get that adrenaline going. So it's not uncommon, and I would tell somebody not to worry too much. If that last warm up does feel kind of a little heavy, you'll be okay. Once you get out in front of the judges, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I think that happens every meet for me. So yeah, don't be too worried about that.
Yeah. So then how did the attempts go? Like, walk us through each attempt for the squat.
Yeah, so I opened. I'm gonna have to remember
Oh, that's okay.
the
Just take some
seconds on
guesses.
all these, the
Yeah.
second attempts. But yeah, so on squat, first attempt, 595 pounds. I was worried about depth, like I said, because my last warm up wasn't awesome. But yeah, the opener went really well. I sunk it, sunk the depth, bounced out of the hole perfectly. My technique looked really good. Of course, in the moment, you know, I black out at a certain point. I don't know how it feels in the moment. I just know whether I came up with it or not at a
Yeah.
certain point. But watching it back, I was like, yeah, that was unquestionable. Looked fantastic.
Yes.
So that was awesome. With that, we went with like our A option, I
Mhm.
guess. So our, perfect day second attempt option. So I think that was 617 pounds,
Mhm.
which would have matched my meet PR. So took that for the second, and same thing, moved really well. My technique on the day was just fantastic.
It looked great. Yeah.
So with that, it didn't move quite as fast as I was hoping. You always want it to move faster than it does.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. But yeah, I kind of just handed the reins over to my handlers on the day and said, "You pick something to
Yeah.
put on the bar. Don't tell me what it is." So they picked out what was a perfect day third attempt for me, which ended up being 639 pounds.
Yep.
And I ended up hitting it again. I blacked out. It kind of looks like I cut depth from what I normally do. So I hit depth, but
Yeah.
I didn't sink it quite like my first two attempts, which is pretty typical for me at these meets, unfortunately. But it passed and it moved. It was a grinder.
Yeah.
But if you have perfect technique, you can grind through weights I don't think you could.
Yeah.
So yeah, super, super happy with squats. I gave it all I had on the day, and you love when that happens on your third attempt. You pick the perfect weight and all white lights.
Absolutely. There's always this feeling for powerlifters is if they're successful in a lift, they always question if they could have done more. If they're unsuccessful, they beat themselves up for not doing a little bit less. But you were able to hit, on all three attempts, we'll eventually, explain is they were all, you could tell when you did them, that was the perfect way.
Absolutely. That feels good. So with that, yeah, coming out of squats, I was in a weird space in my head because my last meet, I did really poorly on bench. I was thinking last meet I came out of squat feeling really good because that was a meet PR.
Yeah.
And I went into bench and it didn't go so well. So I was like, on one hand, I was like, man, I'm having my best day ever so far. The other hand, I was kind of fighting in my head. What if I screw up bench? And it's a weird space to be in. So yeah, from between squats and bench, I really rested up. I was slamming fast acting carbs, so
Good.
Rice Krispie treats,
Yes.
gummy bears, Pop Tarts,
Good. Perfect. Perfect.
and Powerade. Really, that was kind of my go-to the whole day, honestly. So um, yeah, I wasn't counting carbs at all. I was aiming for that same feeling where I was not full, but I was content, feeling and energized. Um, and that's when I took my first bit of caffeine. So
Nice.
normally before working out, I'll take a scoop of pre-workout. So I think it's 250 milligrams of caffeine. Before bench, I took half a scoop. I felt like any more would have just been too much. I was feeling anxious, so
Oh,
you know.
yeah. That would have been
And
tough
on
to
top of
add
that,
caffeine
yeah,
to anxiousness. Yeah.
exactly. I think everybody knows why too. um, so yeah, so that was kind of my plan going into bench. Um, bench, same sort of stuff with the warm ups, a little bit of mobility stuff. Really warming up my upper back and my upper pec tendon. That's kind of my focus on bench, especially. And my lower body was ready from squats, so I normally do have to do a little bit of extra work just to get into my good, you know, leg drive position, I guess is what I'll say on
Yeah.
bench. Um, so, yeah, bench warm ups, always start with the bar on bench just to find that perfect, bar path, trying to emulate that on all of my following sets. Um, so I opened with 308 pounds. I don't know how much that is in kilos, but from
Yeah.
there I was thinking, what again? How do I warm up for that in training? If that was my top set, so I go one red plate, so that's 155 pounds. Red plate in a yellow, so that's 220, and then two reds, so 264. That was my last warm up right there.
Okay, good.
Um, so that's not quite exactly how I'd probably do it in training. I probably would have went maybe done one more warm up.
I was going to say, probably would have added one more on a regular day. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but in my mind, I was thinking if my last warm up moves poorly, I'm going to lose confidence, and bench is not going to potentially go as well as I hope. So that was my entire reasoning. I was thinking, what kind of jump could I take between 265 and 308 that wouldn't, cause any unnecessary fatigue, but would also leave me with a good amount of confidence going into the opener. And there was nothing. I couldn't think of a
Yeah.
good weight. So a big jump for me normally, but again, it worked out. So yeah, that was kind of the gist of my bench warm ups, and
Good.
uh, bench went well, obviously,
Yes.
as well. So 308 opener moved very, very easily. I was having a weird day with my pauses. I wasn't quite as tight as I guess I wanted to be. So
Oh,
my
okay.
pause on my chest was bouncing around a little bit more than I liked. So that led to a longer press command.
Yep.
Because in powerlifting, it's all about it being motionless on your
Mm-hmm.
chest, and it was motionless, so kind of kind of messed me up. Um, so with that, moved very easily. Second attempt, we went for like the kind of plan B, I
Okay.
guess, on bench, just because of that pausing issue. So I think that was 319 pounds. No, maybe it was 325. I went for
Okay.
325, which matched my meet PR again. Um, and it moved well, but had a little bit of a sticking point in the middle. Um, but same situation, I kind of blacked out. No clue how that moved.
Well,
Watching it back, it told me, we made a good decision on the third attempt, which was just a 2.5 kilo jump
yeah.
or 5 pounds. Um, so that was a small little meet PR, and that was top end again. That's what I had there on the day. So
Yep.
perfect attempt selection again.
Yeah. And it probably was ultra relieving to be able to at least hit that second bench, which was better than our last meet. So knowing there was some improvement is definitely going to feel good.
Yeah, walking out of bench unscathed, it was it was a good feeling. And yeah, honest pauses from the judges. I got that. My only red light on the day, I think, was my butt coming up on my second attempt,
Okay.
which was something I was worried about. That's always been an issue for me.
Yeah.
But that was the only red light on the day. So overall, bench was great.
Yeah, that went really well. I was very happy, for you. So it was nice to know, okay, now going in the deadlifts, he's, killed one dragon for the day, is getting through bench, and we actually did something well. So that's definitely going to give you a mental boost. Did you feel a mental boost going into deadlifts?
Absolutely. As soon as I walked down from the platform from that third bench, I was like, it's time for my lift,
Yeah.
like I was just, oh man, I was excited. Like I didn't want to have to wait for deadlifts to start,
Let's just go right into it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, it's time. So, so again, same thing, just crushing carbs. At that point I did a full scoop of caffeine or
Good.
pre-workout. I was like, at this point, I need all stops, for deadlift. So yeah, deadlift warm ups. I started with 2 red plates. Same kind of idea as squats, where I need a certain amount of weight for it to feel right.
Mm-hmm.
And if I start with 1 plate, I don't get as much slack pull out of a deadlift bar.
Oh yeah, it would just pick up off the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, it just comes right up, and it's so little weight for me at this point that it may as well be the bar. It's kind of funny saying
exactly,
that,
but
so yeah, 2 plates is kind of with a deadlift bar when you start to get a little bit of slack, and you've got some resistance. You're pulling with your upper body out of the bar. So that's where I started. And same thing, plate jumps. So 2 plates, 3 plates, 4 plates, and last warm up was again just a yellow on the side, and
Yeah.
I think it was a yellow plus clips, so it's 562 again. And yeah, that was exactly what I needed. That's less warm ups than I've done in previous meets, and I think that's worked out perfect going into the opener.
Yeah, I think it's really good. When it comes to deadlifts, typically at that point of the day, you've come through 2 really big highs and lows. So you get this adrenaline and endorphin, spike and dump after squats, spike and dump after bench. You try to keep up with food and hydration as much as you can through the lifts. So delaying the caffeine is very helpful. And then still being mindful of eating between bench and deadlift is helpful. But then at the deadlift, one of the techniques you can do is to realize I'm about as warm as I'm going to get. So really my goal before I deadlift is, are there any muscular tightnesses that I need to address? If the muscular tightnesses are okay, then the minimal I need to do is the better. So that way I have the reserve of the energy and hormones and emotion and mental health. So that way I can go in and do something fun on the deadlift.
Yeah, and normally, but like currently, our Mondays are heavy squats and deadlifts in training, and I'll do like a little bit of warming up between the two, like some adductor stretches and stuff. But on the day, I was ready. I didn't need to do any further warming up.
Awesome.
So yeah, I jumped straight into it. So yeah, with that I was feeling pretty good with warm ups. Of course, the last warm up again didn't move as well as I was hoping.
That's the way it goes.
It moved slower than I wanted it to, but again, just in my head, I was like, "This is my lift. I'm going to go on the platform and smoke whatever's up there." So yeah, I opened at, I do remember this, 273 kilos. So that chipped the state record at the time. Just wanted to get something I knew would go.
Yeah.
So yeah, smoked that one. That moved super easy. It moved so quick that the bar whipped at the top. It almost pulled me forwards.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
So that had me worried because that has screwed me in the past. When I pulled sumo, not conventional.
True, yeah. Sumo's harder with that whip.
Yeah, so I was happy with that. Moved very well. So second attempt, something I forgot to note when we were talking about squats was, so this was an outdoor meet.
Oh, that's right.
So they built a platform for this meet. It wasn't like concrete or like a gym, normal floor or whatever. It was a platform, so it was a little bouncy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something I think affected most people there on the day, because I was squatting 600 pounds. I was the last squatter of the day.
Yeah.
walking out, it was bouncing.
Yeah.
So it took me a little bit of time to let the bar settle and all that. And that it had a similar effect on deadlifts. Well, hey, come here. Come here. What a guy. All right. So, yeah, so it had a similar effect on deadlifts. So with it being a little bouncy, that means there's some give, some slack in the platform as well, not just the bar and my body, but now there's another element. Kind of
Yeah.
was very odd. So my second attempt, one of the floorboards in the platform was slightly lower than the rest.
Oh gosh.
So my right foot was kind of angled a little bit, and I was already grabbing the bar, kind of like doing my little routine, I guess. I'm not going to back off and restart. That I felt like I was devoted. I was locked in.
Yeah.
So I said, "Screw it! I'm just going to do this." And my second attempt did not move amazing, honestly. Yeah, whatever it was, it caused me to start with the bar a little too far forwards over my toes, even though it felt normal when I was setting up, and yeah, I felt it in my calves. So as soon as I felt it in my calves, I was like, this lockout's going to be rough.
Yes.
And it was a rough lockout. So I think that was 290 kg, so 639. And I was like, man, I was expecting that to move a little bit better, but It is what it is. So with that, again, I told my handlers, put something in, just don't tell me. I want to walk into this knowing nothing.
Yeah.
So third attempt, they put in 295 kilos. That's 650. And that's what was there on the day.
Yep.
It was a grinder, and I was really, really happy with it. It moved pretty quick off the floor as it normally does, and just with my build, that lockout is always going to be rough.
Yeah. You have a very it requires an enormous amount of lats and glutes to get your body to upright out of that starting position. And so our accessories and our programming accounted for it and definitely worked our way to paying off. But it looked really good, but it definitely looked like every ounce of what we had that day.
Yeah, I think, and the meet experience really, really helps. Of course, the adrenaline going through your body, just because you're competing, but all the people cheering you on. You're one of the last deadlifters. That's another thing. You're at the end of the meet. That's just an awesome feeling. All your friends are there. They let us pick our third attempt songs for all the lifts. So for deadlift, I put in "Gangsta's Paradise" by Coolio, and that was. Everybody was telling me after, it was just the perfect song for the moment. And, everything happening, hearing that, going into it, knowing the second attempt didn't move as well as I hoped, I was like, I've got to give this everything.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't going to let myself fail. So yeah, I was beyond amped after that third attempt. I'm still watching back that video now. It's like, oh my God, that was the best. So yeah, that wrapped up a perfect day. PRs on all lifts and the total. 3 state records on the squat, deadlift, and total for North Carolina. And yeah, man, freaking perfect day.
I love it. I'm super happy for you. You do work very hard. You pay attention to all the details. So it's nice whenever you can see that effort and work pay off for like a good person. It's always nice when good things happen to good people. So it's nice when somebody works really hard and they get the reward of that hard work. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, especially after everything we've been dealing with since we started, cutting all that fat and dealing with the strength loss that was inevitable.
Yep.
With losing weight, and now finally getting up there, setting all-time PRs. It's just freaking awesome.
Yeah, I'm super happy. It's been fun. Like we started together back whenever like our weight was above the class, so we had to work down while still trying to build our strength base and then correct maybe some lagging body parts, the underdevelopment in certain areas. So there was a lot of work on multiple levels happening. And it's nice that that foundation is now built and you're getting to now like start to peak that foundation up. And this is the really exciting time is whenever those underlying things are addressed, and now you can just build.
Yeah, that's really what I'm looking forward to is just getting stronger, man, crushing these PRs, making this meet look like history. I keep saying, um, yeah, it's only really up from here.
Nice, love it. Now, thinking about this meet, and you can tie that into like advice for others, but you have like a top three things that you definitely would repeat or definitely wouldn't do, and they would be three things that others can do or not do from this experience.
We're talking about the meet
Yeah.
experience itself.
Yep.
Um,
Or even the prep, like we talked a little bit about weight cuts. We gave that advice.
yeah.
Is there, what are you going to repeat from this experience?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think, well, so my warm-ups, I think it's good to give some thought to your warm-ups before you get to the meet itself. I had them written down in my phone,
Smart.
what I was going to do. So give that some thought, try it out in training to see if it feels right. And yeah, that's something I'll absolutely be repeating.
Yeah, and I think if that somebody has the chance to, I know a lot of, like when I first started into powerlifting, kilo plates, like kilogram plates, were not common at all in commercial gyms, or even some like strength-based gyms. So then when people got to meets, they had to figure out how in the hell do I convert, the 45 and 25 pound plates I normally use in my warm-ups with these kilogram things. So if somebody doesn't train with kilogram plates, I would absolutely recommend they figure out what the kilogram jumps would be for their warm-ups, write them down. You can even list the colors of the plates, but plan that out. Because often when I go to meets, you'll see beginners and even some of the intermediates, they're asking everybody around them, what is close to 135, or what should I do after this weight? And the more you can settle those concerns, the more you can have that planned out. It definitely helps.
Yeah, there's actually an app I think called Bars Loaded.
Oh, love it. I didn't know that.
If you are a powerlifter, yeah, it's super clutch. I was definitely using it, and I use it all the time in training.
Awesome.
So, yeah, highly recommend that. Yeah, warm-ups were a big thing for sure. I think also planning out if you're going to do like a recomp, or even I'm talking about the food you're going to eat on meet day, plan that out like a week before and think about foods that are going to sit right in your stomach. You don't want to introduce new foods or new things
Absolutely.
on the day of a meet or going into a competition. I mean, just imagine you spend all this time, all these months preparing for a meet, and then you eat something that looked good, but you've never tried before. And that, screws the whole thing up for you. So,
yeah.
I tried to stick to foods that I've had before, I know sit well. I avoided foods that, like, I'm not the most lactose tolerant person, so no lactose a few days before the meet. I'm trying to think. High FODMAP foods I avoided, the days leading into the meet, because that gives me a little bit of, distress, I guess you could say. Yeah. Just nutrition is like very underrated when it comes to strength sports.
Absolutely.
And you can tell just being at a meet, the food, you can see the foods people are eating are super high fat foods, or, it's like, why did you choose to bring that?
Yes.
Sort of situation.
Like, how is that going to help you right now?
Exactly. Yeah. So definitely give thought to the nutrition aspect of it all. It's not just training, nutrition that matters. It's meet day too.
Absolutely.
Man, the third one's tough. I think a good thing to do is to get some experience with the equipment you're going to be using at the meet.
Good tip. Good tip.
So in the past, it wasn't this meet in particular, but in the past, I competed in kabuki with kabuki deadlift bars. And going into that first meet with a kabuki deadlift bar, I had never touched one. I'd only deadlifted on Rogue deadlift bars, which are like the stiffest deadlift bar.
Yeah.
So it is complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yes.
But going into my next few meets using what I was competing helped a lot. Same goes for like a squat bar. If you're competing in a deadlift fed, I guess they also use squat bars.
Yep.
Get experience with that. Get experience with a combo rack.
Yes.
If you've never done that, or a monolift, especially a monolift if you're in a monolift meet.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I think sport specificity obviously comes down to the equipment too. And, if you got to go buy a $15 day pass for a powerlifting gym, do that.
It's well worth it. Yeah, well worth it.
So, yeah, I think those are probably my biggest tips. I mean, there's so many things I've learned and just instilled since I started competing that are just no-brainers to me now. But, I'd say those are some big important things people overlook.
That's great. I think those are really good tips, and it's fun to hear kind of like when we hear tips, we don't always hear why. So it's fun to hear the story of how the meet went, then get the tips, and now you know the underlying story of what impact those tips and pieces of advice can make in regards to a powerlifting meet.
That's right. Trial and error. That's the whole name of the game. So
yes, the more trial, the less error.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Now, if anybody wants to reach out to you for coaching and or follow your journey in powerlifting, how can they do so?
Best way is on Instagram at JBCJacked. That's where I post my training, and best way to contact me. I guess that's it.
That's perfect. Make it super simple. That would be the good way to do it. Yeah, awesome. That's right. Well, I appreciate you joining for the podcast. I really like the idea of being able to hear how a powerlifting meet goes, and more than just, I did this weight, the thought process behind the attempt selection, even the process of how do you prepare the week before, the day before. If anybody is wanting to do a powerlifting meet, this is a great opportunity to get kind of like a bigger picture of what is all involved. And hopefully they can take that information and the 3 tips and have a better experience for themselves.
Absolutely. And I think the last thing I'll say is if you're contemplating competing and you think you're not strong enough or you've got to meet some sort of qualification before you do it, just go do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'll be surprised the people who compete. I mean, you'll find every end of the spectrum from the 800-pound deadlifters. We had one there to the people just lifting the bar just because they wanted to come try it. So, yeah, it's fun, man. Absolutely. I love powerlifting. I'm glad I tried or started doing it. And it's a great experience.
Yeah, it's a very inclusive sport. I coach people for a lot of different sports, and powerlifting is by far one of the most friendly sports because there isn't really any defense and you can only lift what you can lift. And it's an environment where people will cheer you on. If you put in your best effort, they don't care if you're lifting 135 or 1,035, they're going to cheer you on.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is great. I love it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate everything, taking the time to do the podcast. And again, I hope if anybody wants to follow your journey or reach out to you for coaching, I hope they do so.
Sounds good. Appreciate the talk. Thanks, Rob.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.